Hello and welcome to another episode of ISO 400. I am your host, Julius Motal. This week I'll be talking with Hugo Passarello Luna, an Argentinian journalist and photographer who's based in Paris and has been for about 5 years now. He's worked on a number of projects, not the least of which is a photo essay commemorating the centennial of Julio Cortázar's birth. Cortázar is an Argentinian novelist who spent the majority of his life in Paris. And the photo essay, which you'll hear about in the episode, is a pretty brilliant approach to commemorating a writer. And as always, our music is provided by Yuki Futami, a New York-based jazz musician. Thanks so much, and hope you enjoy. Welcome to ISO 400. This is the 10th episode. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So you've been in Paris for how long now?
In Paris for 5 years, and before Paris, I lived also in Canada for 7 years.
Okay, all right. So you've had time to be away from home.
Yeah.
I'm curious with. I find that like with my having moved to Istanbul, everything's still. I mean, I've only been a couple of months, but everything's still kind of fresh and new. And I'm wondering, with the length of time you've been living now in Paris, do you still have that fresh sort of outsider's eye, or have you gotten a little more comfortable as far as photographically speaking?
Yeah. No. It's a very good question because I don't know when that happened, but I did feel I stopped looking at some things that most tourists still look. For example, the famous Parisian cafes. At one point, I stopped realizing what was the point of photographing them, which I was doing at the very beginning. I do make an effort always to try to, still feel surprised by whatever is normal in this city. And it happens when I go away for maybe several weeks for vacation or work, and then I come back, and then I try to, intuitively, you get into the tourist phase again. So I guess after 2 or 3 years, I stopped photographing the things I used to photograph at the beginning. But I do make an effort. I started again 2 days ago with my small compact camera, photographing urban things, specifically things in the street, the signs, the road signs that I got so used to. But I'm forcing myself again in between works to have a new fresh eye about the things I see daily. Not so easy, to tell you the truth.
No, I'm sure I've experienced a similar thing. So in between assignments, do you go on walks? Like how do you keep your eye fresh?
Well, the good thing of the summer in Paris is that it stops raining, so that's good. And they have this bike system that I guess that most European cities have them right now, that you can get a bike and get around the city and then put it somewhere else in a different station. So I'm doing that. On Sunday, it was a beautiful day, and I just chose randomly a road, and I went around, and specifically I said, okay, let's photograph the things, the writing, the urban writing that exists on the road, when the basic, because here it changes all the time, not here, everywhere. So I'm looking specifically at those things that that with time and usage, cars passing by, they almost erase those things where it says, I don't know, like delivery or forbidden to park. So I'm looking at those specific things. And that's what I've been doing in the past few days, but as a street art and a personal project, just to go around the city.
And so do you go in with like an idea of like, I'm going to shoot this today, or do you like go in and sort of let yourself be surprised?
Both. Sometimes things happen. Paris, I guess, like New York, Hong Kong, London, Istanbul, so many other cities. Things happen all the time. So you might go somewhere else and you see a pillow fight, or you see a protest, or whatever. So there is that aspect. But while I was riding on a bike here and in Buenos Aires, because I was there in April, I look at the road signs and then I say, hey, look how things differ as time goes by. So yes, I do try to have an idea for personal projects, and the same goes for professional journalistic projects. I try to have a little concept and see if I can follow it. Sometimes you cannot, and then you let it go.
Yeah. Now you're just coming off the Cortázar project.
Yeah.
What So, like, what kind of projects are you working on now? Are they smaller in scale? Because that was a pretty massive undertaking.
Some are small because you need them. And some are big because, I mean, as a journalist, you still need to tell stories, and
Sure.
not always every story can adapt to what you would like. So
Mm-hmm.
I need the small ones because the small ones, I mean, sometimes that not only in time,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe I don't have to work with so many people.
Sure.
And that allows me to be a bit more on my own, maybe here at home, putting some light and photographing. And that exploration allows me, I call it small, but it allows me to look at myself, how I work, where
Mm-hmm.
do I fail, and I talk to people at the same time. Not so much at the beginning, but
Mm-hmm.
once I have something, I show it to friends and we discuss, okay, this works, this doesn't work. So, and the big ones, yes, I do them because I enjoy them, but then it
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of time. It's not the photo, as you probably know, that
Sure.
takes a lot of time. It's the pre-production,
Mm-hmm.
the meetings, the paperwork, and then finally doing the click.
Yeah, and the editing too afterwards,
And
I'm
the
sure.
editing, yes.
Um, so I like you have gone to journalism school to kind of learn the craft and meet people and make connections. One thing I find I still have trouble with because I primarily consider myself a photographer is like wearing like reporter and photographer hat at the same time because they're two different modes of thinking. And I wonder how do you navigate those? How do you move between the two?
Well, those are difficult waters, you're right. Especially because how people perceive them still.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's the same where you studied. They still have a concept of photography or image
Mm-hmm.
and reporter. So they expect you to be one or the other one. But as things move forward, especially in our young generation, we want to and we're forced to explore both the image, the editing,
Mm-hmm.
and the angle. So I think it's more. What I mean is it's more difficult because still some people want me to say, "Are you a journalist or a photographer?"
Right.
Well, I'm both.
Right.
So this is what I find most difficult to pass the message that I can do both, and I have to do both because those are the two. Because for work reasons, because I like it. You know, I
Yeah, of course.
even at the radio. Now I'm working a lot at a radio station,
Mm-hmm.
both broadcast and online. So when the thing goes on the web, I put up the photos that
Mm-hmm.
I took if I could have taken. I mean, if it is something that happened in Paris. So I still go with my photo camera, my lights, and my microphone to do the interview, and then I take the photo of the person I interview, the portrait, and I try to mix both.
Mm-hmm.
Not easy,
Oh
but
yeah, of course.
we're moving towards that professionally,
Mm-hmm.
and I think also I feel it gives me as a journalist and as a person a different take on what I'm doing. I mean, I don't think it's actually dividing too much what I do. It's enriching my
Mm-hmm.
experience and hopefully, I don't know, the
Sure.
experience of the audience.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that there are certain types of stories you're attracted to telling? And if so, what are those?
I tend to look at stories that are related to the space I live in. Now,
Mm.
there is a tendency, which absolutely understandable, of journalists going and photographers going far away
Mm-hmm.
to look for exotic. Which I mean, at the same time, I live in Paris. I'm not a Parisian, and I live in the city. I
Sure.
moved away,
Right.
but I didn't do it for professional reasons. But I like to explore the city I live in, and I
Mm-hmm.
look those stories that that are sometimes overlooked by others, which
Mm-hmm.
is becoming less and less the case because there's so many journalists and so many people getting used to telling stories that everything is being told almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the personal stories. In the case of Cortázar, the project, what I was trying to do is to discover the work of this writer, Julio Cortázar, through the eyes of of his readers, through personal stories. People have something, maybe something in their life changed because of their readings or whatever. So I'm always trying to look that and something that is I don't know if you say that, participative. So
Yeah, yeah,
the audience somehow has a stake in my story. I'm trying to see if I can work that. It's not always easy. Some people like to they just like to be guided. But even that, it's a process that I learned. And also what I'm doing a lot lately is, I would call it conceptual, I'm not too sure, but I like to see, I'm very much interested in image and the message of the image, maybe the semiotics of it, and the discussion that exists in the press of when does the photo get altered, when is it good to alter, to manipulate it, or when it goes against the values of journalism and the image. So now I'm exploring a lot of that discussion that we see it all the time with the world press, the scandals. So in my personal, I'm reading about it, and I'm trying to see one small project dealing what is a true image, what is an image that is worth considering a journalistic photo.
So, with reference to the Cortázar project, how did you? Because I imagine you weren't working on this full time. I mean, how did you fit this into sort of everything else? And you worked on it over the course of a year, right? Or a little more, a little less?
A little bit more, yeah. I did it, I guess, like most of the work you've done and most of the readers of the Photographer. I did it in the evenings, at lunchtime, and during weekends. So those were the moments that I took. Instead of going to lunch sometimes with my colleagues, at that moment I used to work at a TV station here in Paris. So instead of going to lunch with my colleagues, sometimes I would just have meetings, and then I would take off at noon. Hopefully, luckily, I mean, Paris is not as big as New York or Buenos Aires, so it's relatively easy to get to most parts. So I would have meetings there. In the evenings, I would work on the paperwork, and then on the weekends, I would shooting. So I will briefly explain what the project was about.
Yeah, of course.
Explain what I did in this to celebrate 100 years of the birth of Cortázar, an Argentine writer who lived in Paris. And I took one of his most important books called Hopscotch, took the passages, the fragments that would mention a place in Paris, and then put it up on the web and asking people on the web to choose one of those passages that mentions specific place in Paris, let's say the Bridge of the Arts. And then they would choose one of those passages. We would go to that place. I would take a portrait of them, and then they would explain me why they chose this place instead of another one.
Right.
This was mostly people I never seen before. The vast majority I never met. So my weekends were having meetings at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday with, I don't know, Maria, let's say.
Sure.
Maria, let's meet at this place. We have a coffee before, so then we would meet, talk a bit before I would take the photo. Then I would take the photo, and at 1 p.m. I would have the next one, and at 4 p.m. the third one. After that, I mean, there was no more sunlight most of the time in Paris. And the Sunday was exactly the same thing. Almost 6 to 7 photos per weekend. 6 to 7 people that I've never met before. So that wasn't tiring. It was actually obviously tiring, but you get a chance to discover so many people, so many stories, people that you immediately click and you you get along with. Some time, and I also wanted to plan. Could I do a project that would take so long, and how do I deal with people that are not used to being photographed, and even the ones that are used to being photographed? And I could see my limitations. So that was it. That's how it started, basically, to see how would I work with it.
Yeah, and I remember reading or hearing somewhere that originally you wanted to do like a 9-image series and get it published somewhere, but it quickly sort of exploded in interest, and you started getting emails from folks. And it took you way past 9 images. When did you get to a point where you said, I've got enough images? Like, what was your point of like, okay, I think the project is good?
There were 2 moments. One that was in post, the birthday of this guy of Cortázar, August 26th. So I needed to publish something for that day because that was the point of the entire project.
Of course.
At that point, I had around 70 photos. So that's when most of the, that's when I got published online on my website. Actually, I didn't publish anywhere else initially. Then it did get taken by media. But because it got published and mentioned by media, then more people came in, and I said, okay, let's go to 100 photos. So then, to tell you the truth, because we're faithful with I don't know the decimal system. You know, you need to reach the 100. That's the number, the magic number. So I'm still finishing some photos that people sent me an email and I couldn't meet up yet. So I'm getting to 100 right now.
Oh, okay.
But I've been done with the project in my head since late 2014.
Okay.
It's just that I still get emails, and some people have very good reasons to be photographed. They have very good personal stories, and then you just don't want to say no and say, okay, let's meet for a coffee, let's talk, and then you say, okay, let's take the photo.
Did you run into any duplicates, and if so, how did you navigate that?
Duplicates, I mean, people choosing the same fragment?
Yeah.
Yes, it happened. It happened a lot. What I would do is I would take them off the Google Doc that I posted. So as soon as somebody would choose it, I would take it out. In some cases, again, what happened is the person would say, no, but I want that place because, and their story was so personal, so intimate, so touching that why would you say no? Okay, so there are some passages that repeat if you look at the photos, but not that many. The vast majority, I would take them out, and then people, they would not choose anything and go away, or they would choose another one, or they would find the one they wanted in the list.
Yeah. Now, with regards, because some of the photos, the composition is just absolutely wonderful, and particularly in the images I got in the book you had sent me. Did they, I mean, it's a participative photo essay, did they participate in figuring out the composition too, or did you have an idea of what you wanted to do? Like, how did you sort of figure out the layout of the image?
Well, initially what I wanted was people to participate as well. I wanted them to tell me. What I discovered with this is what we already know as photographers, is that most people, once they are going to be photographed, they put themselves in your hands.
Sure.
And you have to have an idea. You guide them. No matter how used they are to being photographed, they still like to be guided. You know, they want to feel that you know what you're doing. So except for one or two cases where people said, when I would tell people, okay, this is what I think, what do you think? And they would give me some feedback. The vast majority of the photos, I had to figure it out. So I would ask, in some cases, the passages that they chose were so visual that it was relatively easy to imagine the photo. In some other cases, I explore. I would always take, depending on the time I had, 2 or 3 different angles of the person. And in some cases, I realized, well, I really don't have an idea. I mean, the place, the street doesn't talk to me. Clearly doesn't talk to the person so much either. So in some cases, I do know that I didn't get what I wanted, but you know, we still tried. And once I shot for like an hour and a half with one person, and the person was uneasy. I couldn't get them to relax very well. I took an hour and a half, and in the end, you know, you got an image.
Yeah.
So I also saw the limitations. In some cases, it's easy. You say, okay, do this. Relax, or put the hand here, or lie down and put your hair on the river.
I've got that image. It's one of my favorites.
Thank you. She was very good. She right away said, do you mind? I'll put my jacket on the floor so you don't get your clothes dirty, and then you just lie down. You have a beautiful hair. Put it down on the river. And she said, yeah, no problem. So it depended also on the person. If they were too old, in some cases, of course, you had to deal with their. Which is, I photographed people that were over 80 years old. Wow. So they get tired easily. You kind of make them walk a lot. So you said, okay, here is fine. You do the click, and then the woman says, are you done? And of course, I mean, he was tired there. Of course I'm done. I'm not going to bug you anymore, so let's go.
Yeah. Now, the book is just a fantastic deconstruction of like the idea of the photo book. It's a stone that you found somewhere in Paris. It's a piece of chalk, 5 images in envelopes, lay them out in a hopscotch format, toss the rock, pick up the envelope, pull out the photo, and sort of experience it. And it's 100 boxes. No 2 boxes are the same. How did you arrive at that idea? I'm sure it wasn't the first thing you thought of. Like, what was the drafting process, and how did you eventually arrive at this setup?
It's a good question, because I would love to tell you step by step, but I cannot remember. I just know that it's what happens when you can't sleep at night, and you're just waiting there, and you're thinking, Okay, let's think. I shouldn't do a book like this. What about putting it inside a box? I mean, the book itself, the book that Cortázar wrote that I based my story on, called Hopscotch, is a book that you can read from the beginning to the end, like a normal book, or a second way of reading it that he suggests, following a different order of chapters. So if you take that order of chapters, then you have a different story, supposedly. And that's why it's called hopscotch, because you sort of play around. So it's like, how do I do a book that not only plays around with the images, but also plays around with the idea of how he did it, how he did his own books. So I can't remember exactly how I thought about playing in those, and you run, and what if I do this, and what if I do that? And eventually I realized, okay, I'll put it in a box, and let's see how it works. And it worked very well. People liked it, or most people like it, and it took me a lot of time. I'm still doing some. I do it I buy the pieces, but then I put them together by hand, each one. So it does take quite a bit of time to do the books.
Yeah. Where have the majority of them? I mean, a bunch of these were for purchase, I'm sure. Like, where have they? Where have you mostly? Are they mostly in France that you've been sending these? Outside?
Outside, it's not so much the region that is similar. It's the origin of people. Most people that bought them, the vast majority were Spanish-speaking people, obviously. So some of them are living in London, a lot in the U.S., of course, in Peru, Argentina, and in France. So it's been around. The vast majority were sold in France, I guess, because it's where I live, and people came to the exhibition. You have to see it. Once you see it, then you feel like buying it or giving it as a present. So for St. Valentine's, I sold quite a few people. I thought it was a nice idea, and for Christmas, So most of them were sold in France, but always relatively in the Spanish-speaking community.
Now, were the folks you photographed, were they all non-French, or were they a mix of French and non-French?
Yeah, well, I try to show the universe of readers, but of course, the vast majority of the people who read him are Spanish speakers. So yes, most of them are many French, or French who speak Spanish, or French who are in the literary world. Either they're studying French literature, they know about his work. So that's the universe. It's mostly Spanish speaking. And at the beginning, one thing that I noticed was when I was using the social networks like Facebook, Twitter, and so on, the vast majority were between 21 to 32, 35. So to get the older people that obviously read him too, what I did was, some because the younger people would know them and say, oh, I have a teacher who knew the writer, she would be interested. And in some other cases, I invited them myself. So they didn't actually come. For example, the best friend of the writer, he's still alive. He lives in Paris. He's 80-something.
Right.
I looked up online his address, and I called the answer. So what I did, I wrote it on a computer, and then I printed, and then I mailed it. And 3 months later, he calls me back. So a bunch of people, the older people, I invited them the old style, by letters.
And do you find that in the course of working on a project like this and with such a timeline, have you changed at all as a photographer and a journalist? Like, what have you, if anything, what have you learned in doing something like this?
Of course, many things I learned. One thing was, again, my limitations. Mostly used, as a journalist, I'm mostly used to work fast.
Sure.
And then when you work fast, you and your colleagues, they understand. I mean, what's the value is in information and in getting the picture more than getting an excellent picture. An excellent picture is better, but you need the photo. What I was trying to work was the opposite. If I have some time, would I be able to get a better photo? Or I'm a guy doing protests and stuff. So what I learned is that yes, you can. It's a completely different world. You need a bit more planning, and and depends on the person. So also my social skills got much better. I mean, I don't think I had a problem before, because as a journalist you're used to talk to different people. But I think I got more confident in my own photo work, and in defending or explaining the concept. So that was the big lesson. You know, you just need to jump in the project. I know it's difficult. Have an idea and go for it. So of course you have to trust in your idea. Initially, I trusted from the very beginning. So I didn't mind so much of the outcome.
Right.
Whatever would happen, it was a good idea for me. I would learn. I would take something out of it.
Yeah.
So yes, that's the confidence managed, and of course the confidence got better as people start contacting you and say, "Hey, I would like to participate." What they need to see is they see a couple of photos and they come, "Oh, I saw the photo you took of this person. I know him," and that fits your ego maybe, but it also fits your confidence.
Yeah, of course.
What you're doing is maybe it's not excellent, but at least it's not that bad. So keep doing it.
Yeah. Now, if we could go back to the beginning a bit, do you come from a tradition of storytellers? Are you the first in your family to do this kind of thing? And like, how did you catch the bug?
No, I think I'm the first. I don't know. My great grandparents were workers, and my parents are doctors. But there was always a culture at home of books. Not necessarily. I mean, my parents didn't have a lot of time to read, and there was not the money for a PlayStation ever.
Sure.
But there was money if I wanted for books. So if they give you that, you start, you feel interest. So I start reading, and then I get into movies. I guess like almost every single kid, I would watch tons of movies. But the movies are storytelling, and the movies are very literature in a way. So since the very beginning, since I'm a kid, I liked stories. I did not know I wanted myself to tell stories, to tell you the truth. I mean, I just enjoy them. I did do some studies some film studies when I was in Canada together with politics. I did both, double major. And I didn't realize, I knew at that point when I started doing film, I wanted to tell stories, but I didn't realize that I wanted to tell more a journalistic style of stories. That came later. I mean, I thought I wanted to do fiction, but then once I finished my studies doing work here and there, I realized that I like to tell stories, but journalistic style. So there's roughly, I mean, I don't know if Cortázar, you could call it a journalist work, because it doesn't follow the traditional lines, but I mean, it's not a fiction either. So
sure. And when did you first pick up the camera, and what was that like for you, exploring things visually?
Let's choose one date, because when you're a kid, you always get a camera, your father.
Sure.
But
yeah,
I think I would say it in high school. I did high school. Part of my high school, I did it in Canada, and they had a dark room, and I just signed up for the photo club. And obviously the magic. This was just before digital would break through the photographic world. So we still had film cameras. And the magic of seeing the photo appear in the paper as you just shake it in the chemicals, that was great. So that was the first time I picked it up. But I picked it up again as a hobby, just playing around with it. And I played around for, I don't know, maybe 10 years until I got to Paris 5 years ago, but 4 years ago, and I did my journalism school. Then is when I realized, okay, this is not only a hobby. You enjoy taking photos, you like telling stories, so why don't you turn that into a professional thing? So first time, when I was in high school, 4 or 5 years ago, is when I started taking it seriously and said, okay, this is not only a machine to tell the stories you like.
And I'm sure it was quite a bit of a change going from sort of a leisurely hobby pace to journalism, which is very much about quick turnarounds. And how did you adapt to that?
I'm still adapting.
Okay.
It's not easy because, I mean, it's not easy to live from it. Sure. Most of my revenues, for 2 years, I was a sports photographer. together with my TV work. So then I would be half and half my revenues. And then I stopped doing sports, and now most of my revenues come from normal journalistic work to which I add my photo work. And of course, I do photo work on the side. But what is difficult is to turn that into a livelihood. It's not that easy. As we know, it has never been easy. And since internet and the digital world, the journalism is going through a revolution. Some say it's a disaster. Some say it's good. It doesn't matter. What it does matter is that it makes it tough to sell stories, tell stories, and to live from it. So I'm still adapting, but I enjoy it so much that I cannot even imagine doing something else. So no matter what's the outcome, no matter if they publish it or not, or if they pay very well or not, I'm still pitching stories.
Sure.
They say sometimes no, sometimes they say yes, and I still do them. You know, I mean, and sometimes people ask me, "So why do you do this?" Well, I have no idea. Well, I have one idea: is I enjoy it. Would I make more money if I would just go to an office and do something else? Of course, my life would be much easier. But I cannot. I think I can only do a couple of things in my life, and they are all in journalism. So I insist.
Are there folks who have inspires you photographically? Are there folks you look to for inspiration? Like, because I've noticed with your photographs, they're very carefully composed, and like the scenes are full of light, very bright colors, careful attention to that sort of thing. How did you develop your eye?
Excellent question. How did I develop? Slowly. It came slowly. Movies. I think I was a lot influenced by movies, and the vast majority of them will still like not so much the dark, I forgot how you call them, you know, with a lot of shadows and all that. I like lights all over, and I like the explosion of colors. Even though that in the Cortázar it's all black and white, I enjoyed a lot. I don't know if people know it, but I mean Almodovar cinema, you know, all these lights exploding. I enjoyed it a lot, and most of my inspiration does not come. It comes from some photographers, but it comes a lot from writers and from storytellers.
Sure.
So film storytellers or writers. So I read, and obviously when you read, reading is a visual experience as well.
Sure.
So that influenced the stories I want to tell, and it influenced how I will conceive the image. But I wouldn't be able. I'm changing constantly of photography that I enjoyed. For a long time, I enjoyed looking at the photos of an Argentine photographer called Marcos Lopez, which is very well known. Lots of colors, very kitsch. But I'm changing all the time. But I'm mostly inspiring from artistic photographers and not so much journalistic photographers. I enjoy that border in which the photography moves to the art, but still tells maybe a journalistic story. I'm trying to see. I'm not even sure if I will ever succeed. Can you tell a journalistic story still playing around a bit the artistic aspect of a photo?
Yeah. Now with photojournalists, I'm always kind of interested what's in the bag. So what do you, when you're out on assignment, say, what do you carry with you? What are you shooting with?
I'm shooting with a camera that everybody hates. It's the Nikon D600, the one that came down. The one that had all those problems and that everybody disliked, and they even stopped doing it. I'm actually, one of my projects is playing around with this idea of the camera that nobody wanted because it has spots all over the place. So I'm using that one. The lenses are basic 24-70. Opens 2.8, and the 2.8 as well. I have a 50, but I don't use it that much. And I have flashes. I have the SB900. And I discovered a light maybe 2 years ago, and now I always have a flash with me. So one time I was teaching a photography class here in Paris, and I showed the flash to the students. They were aged between, I don't know, 21 or 25. And I said, okay, now today we're going to see the flash, the use of artificial light. And a girl said, I don't like it. And I mean, I wouldn't be able to translate it, but what she meant is like, it's against the nature of photography to use flash. You made it as a joke,
Right.
but
I get
but it does reflect what many people think. And I used to feel a bit like that about the flash. Maybe I will feel again in 10 years if we talk again. But I enjoyed it a lot, and I always have a flash in my pocket, one or two maybe, and I take it out and I go explode, or I put the light somewhere. And now I'm exploring something I read in your blog. It's the Fujifilm the X100T, because I was looking for something that was compact, so I didn't have to carry the D600 all over. And I'm exploring that for the past 2 months. For the moment, I'm okay. I still like better my big DSLR.
Yeah, of course.
It allows you to do better, but I have it always in my bag, so it's always there. And of course the iPhone. I mean, most of the time, it takes maybe 5 seconds to get the Fujifilm out of my bag, but the iPhone is in my pocket, so it takes 1 second to take it out. So, so I'm using it a lot. Most of the time, I still feel I'm not happy with the image. I feel that it's much better if I would have added a flash, but of course you cannot. Or I mean, I don't know if you can, but so that's what is in my bag. Flash. It's right now the most important thing. I take it with me everywhere.
So it's interesting. What attracted you to flash? Like what? Because I have friends who are just natural light photographers. I have friends who swear by their flashes. I kind of toe the line. I don't have a strong feeling either way. So what is it for you that made the flash such an essential part of your photography?
In the last few years, I saw a photo essay of an Italian photographer, which I forgot the name, and it was interiors of the houses of gypsies. So gypsy people have lots of colors in their clothing, in their house. And I was looking at the photos like, wow, how did he get those colors, you know? And in some cases, I think it was obviously natural light coming through the window. In some others, I'm pretty sure it was flash. So I was looking at those photos and said, how can I get the same look? Because most of when you go to a conference, there's no enough light. Or when something happens in interiors, you cannot get some colors out. And as you mentioned, I like explosion of light. So then is when I said, let's try the flash. So I slowly start playing around. And since then, I like it. If I'm outside and there is sun, obviously I try not to use it. It's just when I found myself in situations where I think illuminating even one specific area would bring some more information and maybe a better experience, I take it out and go, And I have to say, I mean, I was reading Joe McNally, which has almost everybody read him, and he explained me a bit of the light. I was like, hey, he's not so bad, you know. Let's give it a try. And now it's a must for me for the moment. Let's talk again in a couple of years.
Of course. So as far as your work goes, you said you like to work locally. I mean, you obviously moved to Paris, but you're working within Paris. You're not running off to other cities to go do assignments. Is there another place you think you would like to work somewhere down the line? What are your thoughts as far as your career and where it may go?
At this point, I mean, I like Paris, and if I would have to move, I would move only to Latin America. Maybe because I need again maybe to reconnect to my background. I don't know.
Sure.
So if of course it doesn't happen. I wish it would happen more often, to tell you the truth, but it doesn't. I wish they would send me to different places, maybe Africa, Asia, Middle East. Most of the time that doesn't happen.
Sure.
And at the same time, I prefer to stay because I said I like to tell local stories. I get really interested in that guy who's over there. So if I would stay in Paris or Buenos Aires or other Latin American cities, and I like to stay in a place for a very long period of time, because then is when then is when I feel I can understand some things that I couldn't understand at the beginning. Your question at the beginning was, when you get to a new place, you just get surprised.
Yeah.
You know, the new things. And then with time, you sort of lose that fresh eye, if you want. But you gain in so many other aspects that place that you didn't pay attention before because it didn't look so interesting. Now that you know the local culture, the politics, whatever, the social issues, now it takes a complete different aspect in your head, and you realize there is a story to be told. So that's why I also don't like to move so much, because I find that if you stay in Paris for 5 years, then you start discovering tons of stories that other people didn't look, or that you didn't used to look when you were in a place.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, you mentioned that you had taught a photography course. Is teaching something you do occasionally, frequently? Like, what's...
Occasionally. I did it a couple of times with a group of tourists. I have a friend also who's a photographer. She lives in Singapore, and she brings some of her students, Singaporean students, for a week here in Paris or London. And when they come, we mix a photo class with a photo tour in the city. And then I did teach first time in the school where I studied journalism in Paris. So that was also a very good experience, because I taught in French and then in English, and a complete different aspects. Were tourists and at the same time professional photographers, but in a more artistic way. And the second thing in the school was journalism. How do you get the image? It's something I really enjoy, because they ask you questions that you might have not even think about it, and they push you even farther in your own learning, and you need to provide an answer to their questions, and you need to consider the questions you never even thought about it. So it does help a lot to me. I wish I could always teach, but for the moment I do it occasionally also, because I when you teach you cannot take photos, so you got to find a balance.
Yeah. Is there a question or a set of questions in particular that really caught you off guard in the times you've taught?
Most of the questions that caught me a bit off guard is again the discussion about in the journalistic world,
right?
Of when can you touch or manipulate a photo, and when can you not? And as a rule, I said, look, do not ever touch a photo. That's the rule. But then people would ask that question: what happens if if X situation? So that was one of the main questions they had, and it's a question that everybody has in the industry still. Is touching the contrast manipulation. So and I don't think I personally don't have an answer. I have a position that I'm developing in myself slowly with experience and reading and discussing. But it's one of the subjects that interests me the most, especially with more and more software out there and people have been able to apply filters. It is an interesting question. There's the culture of like, don't touch the photo. It's good as it comes out of the camera, and the other one that's okay. Why don't you just move a bit the light?
Yeah.
Lights here and there, for to me the most interesting, and we could spend hours talking about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. A question I ask everyone in these interviews is, if you could give one piece of advice to a photojournalist who's just starting out, what would it be?
Be persistent and be resilient. It's not an easy. There's so many difficult jobs. It's very difficult, not so much because of not because of doing it, but because of living and being accepted in the community. It takes a lot of time to produce work, and it's just you need to keep insistent, and you need to keep doing despite whether you're published or not. You learn a lot from project to project. I see the ones I used to do long time ago, and I see the ones now. I don't think they're much better. Maybe they're as worse, as bad as the first ones, but I can see that I'm doing an effort. So stay, be persistent. You will take no's. I take no's almost daily for stories. I say, hey, why don't we do this? And they say no. It's not a no that you should take personal. It's a no that is normal in the industry. Maybe the news are moving somewhere else and you didn't see it, or maybe your angle is good, but maybe not today, next week. So just stay and work hard and don't stop. Either, again, if you're not working for a media, do a project of your own. I mean, you did one yourself. This is the one that I'm taking a photo every day for 365 project.
Oh boy!
And I read what you wrote about it. I know. I mean, it's not gonna be easy.
No, of course.
Not so bad to keep shooting, no matter what happened. Even if there's no platform that will publish it, go for it.
Yeah, I know.
It's not easy. I mean, you expressed it very well in your article.
Oh, thank you. I'm very familiar. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk. It's been great to finally sort of meet you.
Either I go to Istanbul or you will come to Paris. It's way closer than what.
This is true. I'm not in.
Tons of opportunities to.
Thanks so much for watching. This has been ISO 400. If you'd like to see more of Hugo's work, you can go to his website, hugopassarello.com. That's HUGOPASSARELLO. And if you like what we're doing, please hit subscribe down below and share this with your friends. Thanks so much, and see you next week.